Oh, regarding Kashmir.
Yeah, Kashmir, just in India, what's happening in India in general, man. But yeah.
Okay, so Kashmir. This is more. Why don't you just start things off and let people have an idea of what's actually happening in Kashmir?
So should we give a brief rundown of what? Because a lot of people don't know. I mean, even people from Indo-Pak backgrounds don't know what happened in Kashmir. So basically, here's a quick rundown. Okay, 1947, Pakistan-India split. Kashmir was a princely state at one time. It was the only princely state with like a Hindu Maharaja that was ruling over a majority of Muslims. Almost 60% Muslims were there. In Kashmir, Pakistan and India began fighting over it because they're like, oh, it's my property, your property. What happened is the Maharaja made a deal. He made a neutral, a neutral zone, and he said, okay, let me buy some time. What happened was the Maharaja then he did a shady move. What he did was he took the weapons from the Muslims who were formerly part of the British army, and he took their weapons and gave them to the Hindu villagers who were part of a defense force. So that made the Muslims a little bit tense, and they started taking. And then what happened was the Maharaja decided to say, you know what? Now we're going to give it to the Hindu villagers, who are a little bit more radical, and they started taking some land. The Pashtuns from northwest frontier province of Pakistan, in retaliation, they moved in to Kashmir without the approval, supposedly, of the Pakistani government, right? So the Maharaja then asked help from India and said, "Hey, help me out, because they're coming in." And then India didn't want to come in because they thought it was a neutral zone, right? They had both agreed. They both signed with the Maharaja. So what they said was, we're only going to help you if you cede Kashmir to the Indians, and then we'll help you then. So what happened was they actually did that. The RSS party in India and the Maharaja created a campaign to take control of Kashmir, and that they massacred anywhere between 20,000 to over 100,000 were killed in that massacre. Okay, so naturally Pakistan they wanted to push back because they didn't recognize the legitimacy of that. They said, listen, we signed an agreement and it was agreed on both parties that it would be a neutral zone. So they pushed back with their army, right? So the Maharaja left an area called Srinagar, which is like the main area where his kingdom was. Okay, but so the Pakistani army, what happened after the Pashtuns came in, the Indian army sent an air convoy. They drop shipped them over there, and they couldn't deal with the terrain. And then Pakistani basically pushed their army in at the same time, and it caused them to retreat. And they wanted the UN to arbitrate. UN arbitrates, and then they say, hey, if you withdraw all your troops, we'll let the people decide what they want to do, right? None of the guys withdraw their troops. Pakistan and India are still there. So they ended up saying in 1949, we're going to make a ceasefire, and we're going to make the line of control, which is what you hear about today, the line of control. That's basically a de facto border splitting Kashmir in two. One is Jammu and one is Azad Kashmir. Azad is in Pakistan and Jammu is in India side, okay? Then what happens is there's a ceasefire, and now there's skirmishes that are happening, and then it kind of settles down a little bit. Then in 1962, the Chinese come in on the Indian side of Kashmir, and they stole Aksai Chin, which is like the area. They just occupied it. They took it over. So India doesn't do anything. But during that time, since India doesn't do anything, Pakistan thinks, hey, you know what? Well, China did
it. They fought over it. Well, Mort, they did fight over it, and China won that war, basically.
There was 3 wars altogether, right?
Yeah.
In Kashmir,
It
wasn't even, the Himalayan soldiers that were stationed there were nothing compared to the Chinese army. It wasn't even like they fought very hard for it. They just overran those people, and India didn't really retaliate much against that. They just kind of gave it. It was a small portion of it next to the glaciers. But Pakistan took it as a sign that, hey, India is getting weak, so let's go in, right? So they crossed over, because keep in mind, the Muslim majority was feeling backlash under the Hindus that were controlling them. So there was always skirmishes going on. So Pakistan decided to go in and say, with the help of these local, Muslims who were trying to fight for their freedom, they crossed in, and the ceasefire broke, and then they started fighting. But then it ended up being like, they had to go back. Both sides retreated to the original lines before the whole 65 thing. Then you have that whole thing in 1971 where East Pakistan, now known as Bangladesh, splits out, right? India helps Bangladesh separate from Pakistan. No longer East Pakistan, it becomes Bangladesh. Then for a while, it's kind of calm. And in the 80s, you see a Muslim population rise because there's more and more oppression on the Muslims. They're silencing them, they're raping their women, people are disappearing. So they're rising up, right? And then this kind of builds tension, a lot of tension. India starts deploying heavy amount of soldiers to this Jammu Kashmir area. Then in 1999, things escalate between Pakistan and India in the Kargil region. I think it's called Kargil region in that area. But this is a very unique time because Pakistan and India both now have nukes in 1999, right? They both became a nuclear country, but somehow they were able to broker through the UN. They were able to broker a peace deal, okay, to de-escalate. Everything's kind of going. We have skirmishes back and forth, more and more oppressions happening to the Muslims. And then now you fast forward to 2008, where India says in Mumbai, Lakshya Taiba, which is a free movement in Kashmir, bombs the Mumbai capital, right? So now the tensions even rise even more. And India begins talking about annexing Kashmir entirely and saying, taking away the autonomous state and saying, we're going to just take the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's building fear among the Kashmiris. Why? Because Kashmiris, that's a nightmare for them. The Muslim majority in Jammu, the last thing they want is the Hindu majority over them that has full rights over them, right? Because they're already being killed. That means an ethnic cleansing is going to happen. They're going to shift. They're going to try to change the ethnic landscape of Kashmir by bringing more Hindus in, right? So they don't want that to happen at all. So this builds into something that happened, a very important moment, which happened in our present time in 2016 with an activist named Burhan Wani. Burhan Wani is an activist and also a young freedom fighter, and he used to have clashes with these Indian army personnel that were there, and he ends up being killed. And by the way, just so you know, around this time, there are 600,000 Indian soldiers in Jammu Kashmir right now. Yeah. Imagine that number, 600,000. That's way more than the population of people. That means there's like 4 soldiers for every single one person in Jammu Kashmir. Yep. Okay?
And there were just some more deployed recently too, yeah.
It's insane, yeah. If you think about the number, the sheer number, insane. That's 500,000, a little over 500,000 soldiers. It's one of the most militarized zones in the world. So this person, Burhan Wani, passes away. I mean, it dies as a martyr. And so massive protests are starting to happen. And then at the same time is when you have Modi also in power. And Modi is what? From the BJP. He has a history of trying to downplay violence against Muslims, right? And he's pushing this whole thing about, annexing Kashmir and taking it back and removing the autonomous status. And he also has an election coming up, right? So he wants to get, and this is a big talking point for them. So what happens is he's pushing this, and it never really went through. But then recently in Punjab in 2018, they made the claim that somehow Pakistan attacked an air base in Punjab. Pakistan denies it. Terrorist groups deny it. They say we didn't have no part in it. And then this is the recent one where you find India actually launching attacks into Pakistan, supposedly targeting specific training grounds for terrorists. And then in the meantime, this is when Pakistan shot down the Indian aircraft. Remember that video about showing that pilot they treated humanely and returned him back to India? Mm-hmm. That's that whole thing. But now, for this new election coming up for Modi, his big thing is, for sure, now we're going to take away, we're going to completely take away the autonomous status of Kashmir, and we're going to own the whole thing. And now the Kashmiris are frightened because, like I said, this is their worst nightmare. Right now, that means if they annex it, it is for sure going to be ethnic cleansing.
And he knows this is going to cause war. He knows this for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's disputed territory, and he knows they're going to have to kill Muslims that are living there, ethnic Kashmiris, and replace them with Hindus who come from other parts of India.
Yeah. And a lot of true colors are being shown now too on political parties, and he's been using this over and over. The thing that really angered me about Imran Khan is when he mentioned when Modi came into power, and even recently, tweeting about Modi and how he's a civil person, he's a perfect person he's literally showing the world that he paved the way for Modi now, so the Pakistanis can at least be distracted by their leader saying that this is okay about whatever Modi's going to do, right? So that's why I think a lot of Muslims are angry with him too, with Imran Khan, is because he's legitimizing this force. And the second thing, before you start, he's legitimizing something that the subservient one now is going to be Pakistan over India, because India is going to climbing up and has been being an economic superpower, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, I think we want to discuss a lot of things that are happening between the lines there too.
This is a great exercise.
Mention one thing before we continue. I think it's really important to the discussion. Just so you guys know.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this whole conflict, it was always supposed to be the decision of Kashmiris to decide which country they want to be part of.
Yeah.
Right. And And according to a recent think tank, over 50%, more than 50%, almost 60% of Kashmiris today want to be independent of both Pakistan and India.
And wasn't
So
that
keep that in
even
mind
kind
when
of the
talking
goal
about this.
of the Maharaja that was there, the Hindu Maharaja? I forgot his name. Hari something. Hari.
Yeah, Hari something. I forgot his
Maharaja.
name, but
I think
yeah.
he kind of he intended for Muslims to some degree. Some people say, I was reading a few conflicting, passages on this, but he actually wanted to respect the Muslims and kind of keep Muslims, and he actually felt bad for them to a certain degree, but he knew what was inevitable. And obviously because of Britain was facing a lot of issues because of all the skirmishes and the fighting that was happening. And some people actually believe intentionally Britain knew this was going to happen to constantly cause this low-hanging fruit problem between India and Pakistan.
This is an excellent exercise. I mean, as tragic as it is, it's a great way for us to learn how to do a political analysis.
Yeah.
Now, what we do is we have to understand how the colonial powers create these conflict zones. We don't see any conflict between America and Canada because there is no conflict zone, right? No one, Canadians are wimps anyway. Sorry. No offense.
I got dual.
But let's just say there is no conflict zone. Where there is a conflict zone, what happens? There's a problem happens, right? Where in the Western Hemisphere was there a conflict zone that had the United States worried about? Just off the top of your heads, someone shout it out.
Iraq, Iran?
Well before that.
In the Western world.
Well, in the Western world.
Oh, the Western world.
Think that-
Oh.
Cuba
Think the
was a big
Caribbean.
issue.
Cuba.
Oh,
So
yeah.
who utilized Cuba during the Red Scare? The Russians, the USSR, right?
Bases were there. Yeah.
The USSR. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is why it's so important for colonial powers not to have conflict zones within their regions. So I wanted the, I think was it Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Woodrow Wilson? Someone said like you can no country from the eastern part of the world can interfere in the western part of the world because they thought the western part of the world, North America, South America, is their sphere of control. No one has. Never mind, the USSR didn't care about that, and they eventually sent a lot of communist agents over there to spread communism throughout South America. But what we understand now is, first, in the past few episodes, and actually in the larger context of the Mad Mamluks, we've always been talking about self-interest, right? How capitalism utilizes self-interest to further their gains, and what we need to do with regards to this situation is figure out who the parties are and who benefits from the situation, right? Right now we have Pakistan, right? And we have India, and we have Kashmir, and we have to utilize, well, who's in what situation? Right now we have Pakistan, who is in a very horrible economic situation. They're asking for bailouts from multiple organizations around the world, the World Bank, IMF. They got a bailout from Saudi Arabia, China, billions and billions. What are they preparing for? Imran Khan promised to set up this welfare state, and he is trying to garner all the resources he can while putting his country into an incredible amount of debt. But this is an election promise that he's trying to put forward, and he's going to try to deliver on that promise, it seems like, at least from all the requests he's doing.
No, before you continue, because you're on an awesome roll right now. Now, the fact that he's being super nice and paving the way for Modi, what is he gaining out of that right now, like as we speak right now?
And well, so we have to
Is it
understand...
because he doesn't want any problems in the future?
Well, what Modi right now is... So you have to understand the relationship between Pakistan and India. India's not in a bad situation right now. They're not...
They're not
They're
nearly as bad as
not
Pakistan
in
right
good situation, but they're
not
just
nearly as bad.
they're just not in a bad situation. And we have to see how dependent India is on the resources that Kashmir provides. They have all these glaciers that provide water, energy. They have a lot of energy that's generated from the streaming water from these glaciers up towards the north. So India is very dependent on the energy that's coming from Kashmir. So see where I'm getting here? It's not going to lead to a very happy ending, folks. I'm really sorry to tell you, if you are Imran Khan fans, he's really not going to help you out in this one. It's
I think here's what people need to realize, and this is putting aside religion and bias. both countries are using Kashmir as a negotiating tool, right? It's a tool that they use. It's a proxy war, but it's a political thing. They, I mean, with all, it's sad to say this, but Pakistan, meaning as a government, doesn't really care much about Kashmir in terms of like the Kashmiri people, right? It's more about confronting, showing a posturing of political positions against India, and likewise with India, right? The idea is that Imran Khan is also in a very tough situation where he's trying to rebuild Pakistan, and and that's why you see him coming to meet Donald Trump in the White House, right? And he's even saying to Donald Trump, "Hey, maybe you can help us with this Kashmir issue."
They met a couple weeks ago. I want to say, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe? I can't remember the exact date, but they both met. Modi and Imran Khan met. They both want a resolution for this, while it makes them both look good at the same time. This is not something that Imran Khan and Modi are like, oh, I don't like you and I don't like you. They're all working together and advancing their interests with the green light of the United States behind them. No, very unlikely, extremely unlikely, less than 1% chance this will go to some kind of conflict where there's going to be war and stuff like that. Get that out of your mind. These countries are
not war between countries, but it's going to be civil war amongst the people, right?
There may be a regional conflict within Kashmir and stuff, and there'll be a terrible loss of life, tragic.
Not country against country, though.
Well, just so you guys know, up till now, the whole conflict, the death count is about 50,000 people so far, right? So from 1947 to
and mainly civilians. They're basically all civilians.
These are civilian deaths.
Yeah.
But also keep in mind now, let's try to be a little bit analytical here and biased. India is also getting worried. Why? Because Pakistan is making relationships. As Sim mentioned, they're trying to amass this wealth in order to create a welfare state, right? To implement social welfare programs, right? To help the citizens come up. Imran Khan's idea is that we can give them a boost, and from there we can jumpstart the economy and start with education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, what that also means is right now, Pakistan in itself as a country is in a very strategic point. In Balochistan, there's an area called the Gwadar Port, and that's a very strategic port in that region, very close to Iran. And recently, Saudi Arabia, China, and Pakistan signed an agreement, and they've created a free zone in that port, and they're developing that. And what that means is you can pretty much export anything you want into that free zone without paying any taxes. You can literally buy and sell like they have in Dubai and Oman and places like that, right? So that makes it a very hot spot for business in that region. And India doesn't like that. Why? Because it takes the light away. India is trying to get a lot of the business from China, because China knows that sanctions are coming on them. America doesn't like what they see as unfair business practices by China. And a lot of businesses are moving out. Like some businesses have moved out of China now in light of these new trade wars. They've gone to Vietnam, and some places have gone to India and the Philippines, right? So they're trying to absorb that business. But if they're creating a free zone with China can get around that by opening companies in Pakistan in a free zone, and they won't be hit by sanctions, right? So essentially, this is also worrying India, because India is an emerging country. Absolutely, it's much larger than Pakistan, but they have a lot more to worry about because of the sheer population size they have, right? They're trying to come up, but they're always 10 steps behind China, even though they're the same size, but they haven't been able to catch up.
Right.
And so India's in a tough position.
Hey, Mort, can you explain what this Article 370 is? That seems to be the revocation of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked
that's
about
the law that's that was in place by a. Sorry, Mort. Did you want something? I can talk about it if you want.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Article 370 was part of a legal document that was created by a third-party institution. I'm not sure what's the term for it, but a third-party body that was separate from the Indian government, that was kind of laid out how the Indian government will designate Kashmir and how it will deal with them, and it was basically illustrating them as an autonomous body that will have its own regional government and will, perform the things that the local population would want them to instate. And what they did was last year the Indian government said, or sorry, the Indian Supreme Court said that Article 371 is now part of the Constitution because that body does not exist anymore, and so that
would mean Kashmir is India's now.
No. They said that they are challenging the validity of Modi saying that Kashmir is part of them. The Indian Supreme Court. Indian Supreme Court is saying that body doesn't exist anymore. Whatever laws that were enacted or whatever rules and regulations related to how Kashmir will be governed will stay in place the way it has always been. Okay. And that's now part of the Constitution. And they said Modi can't change that.
Right. So Sim,
Modi's ignoring it now, and he said we're repealing all that.
Yeah.
Right. So Sim, just to simplify even more, all Article 370 is basically saying that Kashmir is an autonomous region, right? It is not under Indian rule, right? So it has its own laws and own rules depending on because it's an autonomous state. So that's why it's such a big issue. Because if you don't respect that, if Modi doesn't respect that, then that means he can claim it for himself, for India, right? As being the prime minister. And so the Congress, as he mentioned, Parliament is trying to make that part of the Constitution, saying, no, we must respect the agreement that we had with the locals in the agreement within Kashmir, because it's not just taking land, it's also keeping the peace with our neighbors.
And that's why today, I think after that was released, people are so grievous now because they don't know what's in the future.
Now
they don't know what's going to happen.
There's also many different clauses within this Article 370 that doesn't allow Indians to buy land in Kashmir. But now with the repeal of this, it will allow Indian citizens to start purchasing property in Kashmir, and eventually, what do you think is going to happen? Sounds like settlements, right?
Exactly.
Well, so what that means
where are they getting the script from? Their cozy relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
So this is how
ethnic cleansing. It's a precursor to ethnic cleansing.
Yep.
And that's he's not afraid of mentioning that, even whether it's behind closed doors or the BJP party. They know that they've always, even when I was there, man, I personally heard people and Hindus that were on they were like rioting in some areas. It's always been said Muslims are a plague and we can't wait for them to leave. They're a plague, and that's what it is. And
hey, Amir, when you were in studying in India in Lucknow, did you feel any of that? Did you see any of that stuff?
So funny, dude. Me, Irfan, and Haqqani, when we were in a restaurant once, right? And it was I can't remember which political party it was, but it was a little faint. It was Valentine's Day. And they were protesting Valentine's Day because they didn't want any Western ideas and Western holidays in India. And remember, North India is very religious, very
like Salafi Hindus.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I still love my Salafi brothers. I'm not comparing.
No, I mean like the Salafi version of the Hindus, right?
I'm not even going to say that, bro.
They don't want Western
what I have in my heart right now for what's happening in India, bro, I ain't even going to make that comparison. But so I go to the bathroom while we're waiting for our food, and Irfan and Haqqani are waiting at the table, and all of a sudden I hear all this chanting and yelling and screaming inside of the restaurant. I walk inside, and I'm wearing this white thobe. I open the door, and all of a sudden everything goes quiet because there's movement in the restaurant, right? And all of a sudden a door opens, and it was kind of loud, the door. And I open the door, and everything is quiet. I'm like looking at them, they're looking at me, everyone's looking around at each other. We're like, uh-oh, what's about to happen here? And then they just started yelling at like the owner or the waiters that were at the restaurant, saying, you better not be celebrating Valentine's Day because it's Western and we don't take that here, and we're Indian nationalists and stuff like that. I can't remember the name, which group it was.
You should have screamed Happy Valentine's Day.
Is it the Hindutva group?
No. I think it was Shiv Sena.
RSS or
Shiv Sena, or RSS or Shiv Sena. I can't remember.
Okay,
one of those two. But I've seen BJP rallies and stuff like that before, and it gets pretty crazy, man. Because at the end, there's no rules. Anyone could do whatever they want.
I mean, look, the situation in India is so scary that the Muslims are voting for the party that will be the BJP party, which is equivalent to the Republicans, I guess, in the U.S. I mean, they're hardcore Republicans.
It's not even that simple. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Ultra-nationalists, let's just say.
Imagine how, this is a little emotional for me, but imagine how scared Muslims are there now. They know that Modi and BJP are out to slaughter them, but they're so scared and so weak, they're voting for them hoping nothing's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Like they have no other choice.
Here's people need to understand this.
Well, they have a choice.
No, they have a choice,
violence,
but they're so weak. Their mindset is so weak, and they know that no one's going to be there to defend them. You know that they have no help. There's no power that's there to help them. They know that it's like begging the person that's about to slaughter you, like just don't slaughter me. That's what it is. And we're going to vote for you. And Modi knows it's going to happen. He's still going to slaughter them. He knows, you know.
Yeah.
And,
so,
and
so just so you know,
he knows what's going to happen. And whatever people think that they're going to be able to stop what's going to happen, dude, it's the inevitable. It's going to happen. And all the Muslim leaders, right? Pardon me for my tangent. They're all just going to watch everything that's happening.
Yeah, Imran Khan's not going to do anything. No country in the world is going to move an inch when this slaughter starts, and that's the sad part about this whole thing.
So the biggest thing is that people need to understand as well too. Though in India, the government largely in these cases turns a blind eye to communal violence, right? Like there will be people who will get beat up in the street on video. You'll see them getting beat up and punched and making people like you've seen people, where they forced a man to beat his wife on camera, and they have these videos. They surface. They're all over, but the government refuses to get involved and prosecute. They're intentionally turning a blind eye, and they want to put fear into the Muslims. So, and also you have to remember, when it comes to voting season, two things to remember. There are a lot of landowners. And some of these Muslims are poor, and they live on farms where they work for the landowners, and landowners basically decide who you vote for. So if you don't vote for who they tell you to vote for, you're in trouble. You pretty much, it's like modern day slavery, right? It happens. They're peasants, right? And then you have other parties. And another aspect is where you have goons of the party, like pretty much like enforcers that go around town to town, and either they pay you to vote, or they say you better vote or we're going to kill you. You have to vote for our party. And like they'll take a little thumb, the imprint, and that's how they vote. Like they'll put it on the thing and say, okay, they voted, right? I mean, they don't have a choice sometimes. And unfortunately, this happens in Pakistan too. There are a lot of people who go around where they're forced to vote for a particular party, right? So these Muslims, they're not really voting because they're hoping maybe that, not in all cases where they're hoping that they'll be shown mercy. In a lot of cases, they're just forced to vote, like they have to.
All right. So, in summary, dark times ahead. Really, really tragic. Our hearts go out to them. We have to, continue to make dua. And I mean, there's not a whole lot of, encouragement I can give. Unfortunately, until we have a political body that is, whose interest is the protection
There's
and
a
the
rally tomorrow,
preservement for Muslims. No, well, what are you going to do with the rally? I mean, that's great that people want to rally and they want to feel like they're part of something, but political actors move irrespective of emotional sentiments this is not.
I mean, unless you're looking for a chick, go to the rally. Girl, that'll be good for that. But other than that, the rally is not really going to do anything.
Yeah.